It is time to take a stand. Show your hand. We've been talking for too long. Show your hand. All around the Caribbean Sea. Show your hand. Getting to 90. Show your hand. Do you dare lose the fear? If you can't put your hand in the air. It is
Welcome to a
take
special youth
stand.
edition of Coalition Corner, which is a roundtable talk produced by the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities Coalition, CVC for short. My name is Christopher Harper. I'm the Regional Youth Coordinator at CVC, and I will be your host for this discussion. Coalition Corner is a platform that brings together key stakeholders in the HIV response, which allows for an open discussion around the critical issues that affect the populations that they serve. Joining me today for this discussion, we have Shana Lee Smith, Programs Officer at E4Life, Atarda Dimitri Henry, Community Facilitator at the Jamaica Network of Seropositives, Shante Foster, Project Officer at the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network, and Mikhail Williams, Digital Media Coordinator at Equality Youth. All right, so let's kick off this discussion. I'll throw the first question out to you, Mikhail. What do you think are some of the issues affecting young people across Jamaica?
Well, I think that right now a lot of young persons, they face unemployment, but even before that, they have to think about education, how they're going to finance their degrees, and even outside of education, things that happen in their home, how they relate to their parents, their friends, the peer pressure they may face, and how they deal with issues maybe related to their health, mental health included.
Yeah. Dante?
I think that mental health is one of those issues that's coming to the forefront a lot recently because of the lack of attention it's gotten. A lot of young people, their troubles are minimized, and now that we're talking about it, we need to address their issues in that regard.
I heard you mention something about the HIV response in the introduction, Christopher. And I think as it relates to that, we have this thing where we're trying to reach 90. And I think for a lot of that, for the first section, we reached almost 90, but for the other two, we're lacking. And I think that's because of how youth access the services. There are a lot of information or a lot of things that blocks the youth about accessing the services. I still think that's also one of the issues. One of them is stigma discrimination in the treatment site. Youth face that, and because of that, they don't want to go in and access the services. And also around just not a lot of information given to them so that where to go, who to go to, where they can find this, or how they can get this done.
But for the benefit of the viewers, just explain to them what 90 is referring to.
So 90, the first 90 means 90% of the people who are HIV positive know that they're HIV positive. The next 90 mean the people that are HIV positive are on treatment, and that's about 50 or about that, if I'm correct. And the other 90, or the final 90, is that they reach a stage where they can't transmit the virus, or they call it viral suppression or undetectable. Yeah. And so that's where we're trying, that's the goal for the HIV response. And I think in order for us to do that, we just need to clear a lot of these blockages that stop youth from accessing the services, because I think that missing number is a lot of youths, to say.
So I pretty much think what Atarda is explaining is that there's not enough adolescent-friendly services and education pretty much in Jamaica. Well, we have a lot to do in terms of outreach interventions. Picking up from where my colleague, Ms. Foster, was saying, in terms of mental health, gender-based violence is also an issue faced by our adolescent girls, and it has a lot of linkages and relation to mental health, as Ms. Foster has described. In terms of HIV and STI, there's also an increase amongst the adolescent and youth population being infected. And I think that is the reason, lack of access to adolescent-friendly services.
And to add to that, not also lack of the services, but lack of the information. So it's almost like people say they don't want to give these youth information because they don't want them to go out and explore. But it's not about them not going out and explore, it's about them being able to protect themselves or better protect themselves or practice safer sexual practices so that they're equipped to, when this comes, they know what to do. When that comes, they know what not to do.
Yeah, and information is really important again because the knowledge is on the decrease at the moment among adolescents, while the HIV transmission rate is on the increase. And these are directly related. When they don't know how to prevent HIV, what are they supposed to do?
As in the health center, we want the youths to access the services, but then when them go in, them face so much things. Doctors are looking at them a certain way. They have to wait so long to see the doctor. I've heard of instances where people have said that they've been into the health center and people are calling people and they say like, yo, Dr. James, come for your people them, or Dr. John, these people are come see you. You know them look at something there, put in like a certain color door, so when people go there to access that services or where people to go through that door, you know, say, as somebody who have HIV is going to use the door. And people don't want that. People don't want to go there and be easily identified or in the case or involuntarily disclosed just because they're trying to access a service.
And I'm following the dialogue, and I want to kind of bring it back because we mentioned broad topics, mental health, sexual and reproductive health, and based on what you're all saying, that there's a major deficit in information and knowledge. Do you think there are any programs, interventions, strategies that have currently been implemented or are in place that would help to, navigate or mitigate that kind of deficit?
As it relates to SRH, well, I'm not so certain about those and probably laws and stipulation, but I've known of people trying to provide the information to youths, but because of the blockage, like for instance with the schools don't want you to bring a certain type of or a certain level of information inside, and because of that, the relevant information that they need to get, they're not getting, or the relevant information that can help them, that they do have access to.
Yeah, because most of our young people, the way that they're going to get most of their information is through the schools. And if the school isn't teaching, then where are they going to get this information?
And then while social media is playing a big part, but a lot of these CSOs nowadays are using social media, the advantages to give out the information, but how much people are on social media, how much people can access it?
Right, because I was about to ask, given the fact that we're from various organizations and entities, do you think that social media penetration has been substantive over the last decade, given the fact that, we're in a digital age and it's supposed to be that solution?
Social media has been really beneficial for me in my organization, seeing as I've been doing a lot of work around digital media and creating content that is driven for youth. One of the major challenges I've find though is reaching persons in rural areas, whereas you can find a huge audience here in Kingston or perhaps in Montego Bay or in most of those town centers where persons are located. When you go into deep rural areas, they don't really have the access information on social media. Not a lot of youth have phones or have money to purchase data or go on Twitter or go on Facebook all the time. So I think that the government or organizations really need to look into that, into providing solutions to tackle how persons access information, not just technology-wise, but having programs that can reach them in the education system.
And also, he mentioned about the rural area, bringing it back to accessing the services and the information. Sometimes you have to travel from John to Bakagad and turn left for reach to where you go, and then sometimes that takes a toll and you don't want to do it.
So basically, we just need to mainstream the HFLE curriculum that Ministry of Health and Youth Information is now pushing.
Shanali raised a good point about the current structure or whether or not the health and family life education curriculum imposed by the Ministry of Education is actually being, I would say, progressive in actually addressing the issues or the entire information gap that exists out there. So Shana, given the fact that E4Life has been working alongside the ministry around the HFLE curriculum, what would you like to share about the effectiveness of it in its current form?
So major progress have been made in terms of the SRH module. We have trained teachers around delivery. The content itself is pretty much awesome. It is grounded in human rights, gender, intercultural perspective, and it has a twist to it, emotional intelligence, because, with EI, emotional intelligence, we learn to navigate relationships and so forth. We have used the SRH component in our outreach and intervention session as a means of M&E, and the student pretty much grasp the information, and you see there's an increase in knowledge within that session.
So what I want to know, I heard that you said the students have grasped it, but how receptive have the teachers been to that change in curriculum?
The teachers are pretty much receptive to the trainings about once we equip them, they'll be comfortable enough to deliver the content. I know for sure, speaking with Ms. Anna Kay, they want to deploy more HFLE designated teachers into the school. So it's pretty much.
And has there been any work from EFA Live's end around working with teachers, college students, given the fact that they have to learn HFLE in their second year?
Well, we haven't engaged teachers college pretty much. We're waiting from Anna Kay's Ministry of Education to pretty much take the push forward, and then we partnership with them.
Okay,
But
all right.
as discussed, it's coming from their table, and then
Okay, so now I want to hear from Jayan, because I know the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network has been doing a lot of lobbying, a lot of advocacy around integrating what we've known as comprehensive sexuality education into the health and family life education curriculum. Tell us more about CSE, what is CSE, why it's important, and how different is it from the current framework that exists?
Comprehensive sexuality education is a human rights-based, age-appropriate and culturally relevant education around sexual and reproductive health. So it gives your young people information around their sexual and reproductive health that isn't just limited to HIV and STIs. It also has a component related to gender equality as well. So it's an inclusive education program that has a lot more to it than the current HFLE.
And I know one thing I've realized, we're all young people here. Theory, practice, two different things. Yes. What has our experiences with sexuality education been like, be it in our secondary or tertiary education?
Personally, we had someone who was living with HIV come and speak to us about how to use a condom in a very theoretical sense, and that was probably the extent of my exposure to any sexuality education.
So for me, you go to guidance counselor class, or that period them set aside where you go learn life skills, and them tell you probably use a condom or abstain, or there wasn't much. Them tell us say you have a single parent family, nuclear parent, extended family, all of that, and nothing that's really inclusive of if you have sex without a condom, what you gonna do? Or this might happen, or you might end up doing this, or in this case, and what some of these things that you experience, like for instance, we all know that in high school, young girls probably have a sugar daddy. And it's the truth. And they don't tell them that if these kind of behaviors can carry a certain risk towards you, that will, when they make these choices, certain things might happen that you might regret. In the sense, and this is because they don't tell you that if you have a man who pay a school fee, then he might abuse you, or he might have sex without use a condom, and him don't care because he might give you a little money.
Well, I pretty much from 7th to 9th grade learned about contraceptives and personal hygiene, nothing else.
Yeah, it's very limited.
Yeah.
The thing I probably remember, it was just learning about diseases, but that was mostly like scare tactics to me, because I remember them coming with the little book and showing you what happens if you get them disease here, and that was scary.
I've heard from current high school students who have been told, oh, these are the diseases that you can get, these are photos of people who have them, and it's, again, scare tactics.
And I think it's because most of these teachers don't even know themselves, because they've never heard about it. Half of them get pregnant on them first time without even knowing, because it's just something that them do. And they weren't getting the information themselves, so they don't feel like it's relevant or relative to give the information to these students.
So basic things like even anatomy are just not taught. So there are people going around who don't know how their bodies work.
And even simple things like something that happened, like telling them about, giving them adequate information about when young girls are in their period. Those kind of information don't really happen. So some girls are afraid.
We'll explore that content in a biology class in terms of puberty, menstruation, and all of that.
Yeah, but
what I think for guidance counselors, for my I'm pretty young, same in my time. It pretty much gave me the life skills lesson to even navigate my little boyfriend and girlfriend story going on. Yeah.
And I mean, we always hear the same narrative around comprehensive sex ed, HFLA. It's going to encourage promiscuous behavior. It's going to send our children to go and have sex. What are your thoughts about this, and what are some of the other misconceptions you've heard around it?
If you are not giving them the information and they're still going and being promiscuous and having sex, what sense it make?
I think the missing element is that we are somewhat leaving the parents behind. We have to include the parents, let them understand that adolescents and youth do have sexual and reproductive health rights, and we equipping them or pushing for this is not taking away their parental responsibility, but basically helping the family to become more resilient towards the realities of our youths.
Yeah.
And helping them to appreciate that the home is a safe space to have those conversations about sex. Yeah. That's a big thing. So don't be afraid to talk to your parents about sex. Our parents shouldn't be afraid to teach their children about sex. Ensure that the home is a safe space in the first place.
It starts with the home, and then if it's in the home and they have confidence, nobody else can take that confidence away. Nobody can take them future away, and they will easily make better choices.
So what I wanted to know from an organizational standpoint, and I'll start with you, Mikhail, what do you think are some of the strategies or interventions that you have been doing through your organization to kind of address the issues faced by young people? And I kind of also want you to throw out a call to action for the government. What do you have to say to them?
Well, for Equality Youth, we've been engaging in our Building Bridges series. We just wrapped up our 5th one in Portland.
What's Building Bridges?
Building Bridges is a series where we go to different communities and have frank and open discussions, where it's about citizenship, security, mental health, peace, how they feel in their homes. And it's sort of just creating a safe space for you to just air out their stories and for them to give recommendations that they can even put forward in call to actions and speak about. We can eventually write them into discussions with government or even meetings. We bring out the different points. So that has been very helpful for youth that we have been engaging with. In terms of what I want to see the government do is to create more spaces like that for youth, because from what we have been seeing, youth want to have those discussions, and they have a lot of questions as well that need to be answered. So that would be pretty helpful.
Okay, so from JAN's perspective, we have what we call our JAN Advocacy Council, which is 25 young people who we are teaching about their sexual and reproductive health and rights, about human rights in general, and how they can advocate on their own behalf. So these are young people who know their rights and actually want to help others to know more about their rights as well. We'd spoken before about how some people believe that learning more about sexuality will actually cause young people to be more promiscuous, but the opposite is true. Demystifying this whole sexuality actually stops young people from being as curious, as young as they might have been. So they know how to navigate relationships, negotiate about the condom use. They know how to protect themselves and how to interact with the world during this transition period to adulthood. So I really want to call to action for the government to have comprehensive sexuality education be a core part of the HFLE program. We need all of our young people in all the schools, not just some schools, actually learning about sexuality in a healthy, life skills-based way.
So for JN Plus, I know that we have a deployment program, which we send people out into the health center, the treatment site, to work with persons who are not adhering, to just share their life experiences so that people can see that, this is not, a death center. This is something that you can live a long life to. We also have created a space or a system called JADS, Jamaica Anti-Discriminatory System, for HIV, where people who have experienced issues in the health center, discrimination, stigma, whatever the case might be, by whoever, or at your job or whatever, so to report these cases and seek some form of redress. And it don't always have to be monetary. It might just be that some people probably need training, or people need development, or people need more sensitization around the issue, so that people can be aware that these people are about and they're living and they don't want to be like everybody else. And what I will call, and youth in particular, and what I will call the government to do as to youth, for youth, is just try to create more youth-friendly safe spaces so that they can get a chance to be a part and to get healthier. Yeah.
From E4Life, we continue to respond to HIV-positive teen moms and sexual abuse survivors and OVC population through our mentorship program, outreach intervention, and capacity building and sensitization session. For us, we think that we just need to improve programs implementation. We have a lot of policies, frameworks. We have a national diversion policies, and all the whole works. We just need to strengthen how we identify and improve best practices like the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, the teen hubs, the mentorship program at E4Life. And we also need to replicate these programs in rural areas. Most of these programs are being piloted in the urban, Kingston, everything happening there. So that subset is being left out. In terms of call for action, I'm assuming that the government would have a youth work plan and a budget that is reflecting the investment that is needed to fill some of these gaps.
And you know, based on what you're all just shared, I couldn't help but notice a common trend in everything that was shared insofar as the individual is at the center of your response, the young person, the participant. So what I want to know now, and I'll start with Shantae since you mentioned that you're developing, or JN is developing, a youth advocacy council. What does meaningful youth participation look like, or what's that?
So meaningful youth participation is giving the youth a voice for themselves. So not speaking on their behalf, not letting them be in the background or using them for photo opportunities. It's young people who know their rights and are able to speak up for themselves.
Now, I was asked this question a while ago, and when I answered the question, the people looked at me and was like, huh? But that makes sense. But how I answered it was, how can you have a wedding without a bride? You know, how can you be planning for somebody and planning for something and planning for implementation and allow them to use these resources without having them a part of it, without having them from the implementation all the way through to planning, even the conceptualization through to planning through to the end result. If we don't give youth the chance to be a part of that process, then they're not gonna, as in, I won't want to be a part of anything you want to give to me if I don't have a say in it.
Yeah, and the same applies, even as a young person, I don't always know what teenagers are interested in. I'm not a teenager. So they need to be a part of all of this planning because they know what they respond to the best.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, it's always important to have a seat at the table, and you should also have the skills and the tools going in to speak about issues that they're facing. So a big part of that is ensuring that they have the knowledge as well, because not every youth has knowledge about human rights or knowledge about what happens in policy. So ensuring that they have that knowledge beforehand so that they can be vocal about issues that they're talking about, whether sexual reproductive health, about human rights, or just be included.
But not only so that they can be vocal about the issue, but so that they can know when there's an issue. Because if you don't know that there's an issue, then there's nothing to be vocal about.
At E4Life, well, the niche for us is meaningful engagement, means that our clients, our mentees are a part of the discussion. They are the ones who influence our programs, because we started out in the HIV response, and it's from that we have our program which is designed for the sexual abuse survivors. So from that, meaningful engagement means you have an increased opportunity to target, map, and have a broader impact.
There we have it, folks. A lovely conversation. We started at exploring some of the issues affecting young people across Jamaica. We heard about their sexual and reproductive health. We heard about mental health. We heard about employment, education, the whole gambit of the experiences that they face on a daily basis. We managed to segue and to unpack sexual and reproductive health a bit more. We heard a lot of insight, or we received a lot of insight into what health and family life education looks like. We explored why we need CSC. And I mean, we have to commend the group of young persons here for putting the government at the forefront of this conversation, because they're the ones who have the power to influence a lot that happens in Jamaica, and we are basically should be a part of that process. So, you know, I'm reiterating, we're calling on the government to do more. We are the future, and that needs to change. Something needs to be done. So this is to close the session. Be sure to follow us on social media and look out for the next episode of Coalition Corner. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.
Time to take a stand. Show your hand. We've been talking for too long. Show your hand. All around the Caribbean Sea. Show your hand. Get into 1990. Show your hand. Do you dare lose the fear? If you can't put your hand in the air, it is time to take a stand. Show your hand.